So today we're going to be talking about Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever, and I got to move a little bit closer to the old screen because I can't reach the keyboard. But we're going to be talking about them and the Fever and the notion that Caitlin Clark is not the main reason for the Fever making the playoffs. Or the talk from Cheryl Swoops that the Fever would in fact make the playoffs if it wasn't for Caitlin Clark. So we're going to be going over that right now. And before we get on, if you guys are new to the channel, subscribe. We are trying to hit 25.7k by the end of the day. Right now, we are 44 off. We could do that. That would be insane. So, anyway. We got to talk about the Fever. We got to talk about what they're good at, what they're bad at. They're real bad at defense. They're real good when it comes to playing in transition. They're real bad at shooting, other than Kelsey Mitchell. And they got a real good center and a real good point guard. That's it. That's it. One other big reason why people do not realize how good this team is they have the craziest home court advantage in the history of sports. And by that, I mean they have a massive home court advantage when they go on the road. And it's not about fans cheering for them. It's the fact that teams are having to literally not play in their stadiums. Having to move stadiums for this team. So they're not home. The Fever are used to playing for 15,000 plus people every single game. So if you're playing, let's just say the Mystics, when there were 20,000 people there. The Mystics normally play in a 10,000 seater stadium. So if you're a Mystics player, the Fever are used to playing in front of 17, 18, 20,000 like it's nothing. But then suddenly you're a Mystics player and there's 4 times the amount of fans there as normal, and they're all cheering for the other team. You're basically playing away. They get a home court advantage in other team stadiums. So that might be one of the biggest factors for Caitlin specifically. One's why doesn't matter whether they're home or away. But you look at the team. I think Kelsey Mitchell, for good or for bad, Kelsey Mitchell does Kelsey Mitchell things. She's a gunner. She's just going to shoot every time she touches the ball. I think Melissa Smith has had a huge regression. I'd look to get off her. I think she's a really good player. I don't think she fits. Christy Wallace, how she's in the WNBA and was get a starter is beyond me. Victoria Saxton is there for the vibes. Aaliyah Boston. And now this is one of the biggest things when people are like, oh no, the team would run more through Aaliyah Boston if Caitlin was there and they'd be winning games through Aaliyah. The problem with that is that unless you are someone there's a lot of people when they're talking about this that decide to ignore the basketball of it. And I'll use the Chelsea Gray as an example where it's like she very clearly can't move. But because she used to be good, people are so scared. So many fans of women's basketball don't talk about it like it's a sport. Like we saw when Blake Griffin lost his athleticism and he picked up some injuries that he just wasn't the same player. It's cool to admit someone's not the same player. Like I've literally seen people still saying like, oh, Australia should be winning the Olympics. Lauren Jackson's on the team. Lauren Jackson retired 15 years ago. She basically retired from the WNBA 15 years ago and can barely run. She's 43, retired 15 years ago, and people are like, oh yes, I've got Lauren Jackson, she's the GOAT. Like, she's 43 and can't move. But Aaliyah Boston did not show up in shape. And that is a fact. That is not like, trying to tear down Aaliyah Boston. No, Aaliyah Boston's playing exceptionally well right now. She's played her way into shape. Aaliyah Boston did not show up in shape. If they were running through Erica Wheeler, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell, they go 14-0 maybe. I want to see what the first game they would have won was. I'm going to go through their schedule, and I'm going to say, without Caitlin Clark, which is the first game they win. And by the way, let's just say again, hypothetically, they get the second pick, so they get Cameron Brink. You take Cameron Brink with second pick. Even though you need a guard, you're not going to take JC Sheldon. So Cameron Brink comes in as a bench player for this team. So, how many of these games do they win? What's the first game they win? Preseason doesn't count. They still lose that. They still lose that. They still lose that. They still lose. 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 They won this game, or they won the first game against the Sparks. They don't win that game. They won that game because Caitlin Clark, as bad as she was throughout the game, she hit the 2 dagger deep 30-footers in a row to win that game. They lose this game. They definitely lose to the Sky without Caitlin. Caitlin was really, really good. Her all-around game, I know she only had 11 points, but she had a near triple-double in that game. She was really good. They obviously still lose this game. They still lose this one. The only reason they won this game again was because Caitlin Clark had 30. She had 30, and hit 5 threes in a row. It's the only reason they won the game. They still lose this one. They still lose, or they still probably win this one. This was a game. This was all Leah Boston. This was the game where like she came back from the Connecticut game where she was kind of put on at the end in garbage time, played really well. She was kept on in garbage time, and they won this game. So this is 4-10. Without Caitlin Clark, instead of being 4-10, they're probably 1-13. They're probably Mystics bad to start the year without the ability to pick it up. I think they win between 5 and 6 games. And that is being generous without Caitlin Clark. And that's with Cameron Brink. If they fall to number 2, they're winning between 5 and 6 games. And you might be saying, oh, but like they won 13 games last year. Yeah, but there's no teams this year as pathetically bad as what the Mercury were last year or the Storm were last year. There's no teams as pathetically bad. Like if you want to look at the standings, if you want to actually look at the standings here, like these teams at the bottom are not bad. The Dallas Wings, they're not going to make a fight for the playoffs, but like when you've got an Enrique, you've got Natasha Howard, JC Sheldon's playing well, Odyssey Sims has been like a revelation, and you've still got oh my god, I forgot the name of their Brown is their backup big. It's not Billings. Their big 6'7" is huge. The Washington Mystics are not that bad. The Sparks are the worst team, probably the worst team in the W. The Dream were 6-6, and then when Ryan Howard went down, imploded. The Sky, again, like the Sky would have been near the bottom last year. They've not been, other than Kennedy Carter. Angel Reese has been really good, but like other than Kennedy Carter's been carrying them, they haven't been great. And I will say this, the Fever, like actually no, what am I talking about? Sky would have been alright last year. There are no pathetically bad teams this year. We've seen it. The Liberty have lost to the Fever. The Mystics have beaten good teams. The Mystics were like this close to beating the Liberty. The Wings started off 3-2 and have beaten some good teams. The Sparks have beat the Aces twice. The Dream beat the Connecticut Sun. That's their one win, by the way. They're like 1-12, and their one win was against the Connecticut Sun. The Chicago Sky have beat the Aces, and the Liberty. The Indiana Fever have beat the Liberty and the Lynx. So all these teams are beating better teams. Last year, the Fever did not beat a team above 500. The common denominator is Caitlin Clark. Like, look, and that's fine to say. Caitlin Clark's made the game easier for her teammates. It is what it is. And to say that this team will be in the playoffs right now is crazy. It's crazy because they lose a lot more games to teams around them. They would be, I don't think they have more wins than the Wings. I don't. I think 6. So what have they played? They have played 26 games, I think. If they were 6-17 or 6-20, yeah, I'd say 6-20. That is my prediction for what the Indiana Fever would be. 5-21 or 6-20. I think they would have taken a step back from last year because everyone being like, oh, but like they would have gotten better even without Caitlin Clark. Like if you look at the team from last year, first of all, Katie Lou Samuelson has not been a good addition. Christy Wallace, who was a pretty decent shooter last year, is playing terribly. Erica Wheeler has completely regressed as a player. Kelsey Mitchell still does Kelsey Mitchell things. Aaliyah Boston is only recently starting to find her form from her rookie year. Aaliyah Boston did not show up in shape. This team would have been worse than last year without Caitlin. And even if they fall to 2 and get a Cameron Brink, they do not make the playoffs. If Caitlin Clark is not on this team, they're getting the number 1 pick again. Again, a hypothetical where, I don't know, they traded their number 1 for a team giving them 4 firsts in a row. If a team gave up 4 firsts in a row for Caitlin Clark, and they said, you know what, we'll do that, they would still be they'd be still the 44% chance of the number 1 pick. Because they'd be the worst team. They would be the worst. They were the 3rd worst team last year. They would be the worst team this year without Caitlin Clark. There have been 4 to 5 games that she has won them individually. And then there have been games where you just know for a fact, like the Liberty game or the first Mercury game when they made that huge comeback and everything went through her. There are a lot of games that they don't win. Games they win even if she's not there. Probably the Dream game where she was terrible. They probably win. They probably beat the Dream again when Ryan Howard wasn't there. They probably beat the Mercury when their whole team was injured. They might scrape a win somewhere else. But other than that, no. This team wins most 6 games without Caitlin Clark. And that's not saying Aaliyah Boston's not playing well. That's not saying Kelsey Mitchell's not playing well. But the big reason for the turnaround is because of her. Like, look, last year, they were able to beat tanking teams. They were not tanking. Like, there were teams tanking. The Mercury just wanted to do whatever the hell they could to get Caitlin Clark. In fairness, they did get Kat Copper with that third pick. But they wanted to do whatever the hell they could to get Caitlin Clark. Teams were tanking to try land her. They just didn't. And the Fever got lucky and did. And they weren't trying to lose. They were trying to win and still barely won more games than teams trying to lose. That's how bad they were last year. There is a 0% chance they make the playoffs if Caitlin Clark is not on this team. So, is she the only reason? No. Aaliyah Boston, if Aaliyah Boston played like she did, like if Aaliyah Boston decided, you know what, I'm just going to not play my way back into shape and just coast through the season, yeah, they probably don't do it either. They probably aren't in the playoff hunt either. Because Aaliyah Boston's been unbelievable too. But it's all, 22 is the main reason. And to say otherwise is just delusional.